I still remember the exact weight of that envelope in my hand, the way the paper felt stiff and cold, like it had been sitting in that locked box for months. My hands were shaking not from age, not from the arthritis that had been bothering my left wrist since winter, but from the kind of shock that hits you somewhere behind the sternum and just stays there, pressing. That was a Tuesday morning in October. But to understand what I found in that box, I have to take you back to the Saturday before, when I stopped at Rutter's on Route 30 for a cup of coffee and met a man I had never seen in my life. My name is Frank. I am 67 years old. I spent 31 years teaching high school history at Lincoln County High, and I retired 6 years ago to a 3-bedroom house on 4 acres outside Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. My wife, Carol, passed away 3 years back from pancreatic cancer. It was fast. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the last morning I held her hand. I do not talk about that much. What I will say is that after she was gone, the house felt like a museum. Every room had something of hers in it. And for a long time I did not know whether that was a comfort or a punishment. My son, Ryan, lives about 40 minutes away in Chambersburg with his wife, Melissa. They have 2 kids, my grandchildren, Owen and Harper, who I love more than I can put into words. Ryan works in commercial real estate. Melissa does bookkeeping for a few small businesses. On the surface, we were a normal family. Sunday dinners maybe twice a month. Phone calls on birthdays. Ryan would come by sometimes to help me with yard work. Or at least, that is what he said he was doing. I had no reason to think otherwise. Not until that Saturday at Rutter's. I had gone in for coffee and one of those pre-made egg sandwiches, the kind Carol used to make fun of me for eating. There was a line. The man ahead of me was fumbling with his wallet, pulling out cards and putting them back. Clearly flustered. He was probably 70, maybe a little older, wearing a gray work jacket with Hensley Plumbing stitched on the chest. He finally found a $5 bill and paid for his coffee, then stepped to the side and started adding creamer. I paid for my order and moved to wait beside him. He glanced at me, the way strangers do. And then he looked again, a longer look, the kind that means something registered. "You're Frank Deller," he said. It was not a question. I told him yes, I was. I did not recognize him. "You probably don't remember me," he said. "Ray Hensley. I did some work for your wife, maybe 8, 9 years back. Replaced the water heater in your basement. She made me a sandwich and wouldn't let me leave until I ate it." He smiled at that. "Carol was a good woman. I heard she passed." "I'm sorry." I thanked him. We talked for a minute the way people do, catching up on nothing in particular. He asked if I was still out on the same property. I said I was. He said he drove past it sometimes on his way to a job site. Then he stirred his coffee, and his expression changed. Not dramatic, just quieter. "This is none of my business," he said, "and you can tell me to mind my own affairs." He paused. "But I've been driving past your place more often than usual lately, because I had a job on Orchard Road last month and again 2 weeks ago. And I noticed both times I drove by a car parked at the end of your driveway, just sitting there, different times of day. Once was early, maybe 7 in the morning. Once was late afternoon." I asked him what kind of car. "Silver Jeep Grand Cherokee, Pennsylvania plates." I didn't get the number. But it wasn't there just passing through, it was parked. Engine running once, lights off the other time. He looked at me steadily. "I don't know what that means. It might be nothing. But I know you live out there alone. And I figured if it were my father, I'd want someone to say something." I stood there for a second, trying to remember if I had seen a silver Jeep. I could not place one. "One more thing," he said. And then he stopped like he was deciding whether to continue. "I'm not one to spread gossip, but my wife's cousin does bookkeeping work and small towns talk. I heard through some people that there's been some interest in your property, like someone was asking around about what it might sell for." He held up a hand before I could speak. "I don't know who. I don't know if it's connected to anything. I thought you should know to pay attention." He took his coffee, nodded at me, and walked out. I stood there holding my sandwich, and I could not have told you what I was feeling. It was somewhere between dismissal and a low, cold hum of worry I could not name. I drove home and I told myself it was nothing. Someone turned around in my driveway. Ray Hensley was a well-meaning older man repeating half-heard gossip. The world was full of silver Jeep Grand Cherokees. But that evening my son called. Ryan said he wanted to come by Sunday afternoon with Melissa and the kids. He said he had something he wanted to talk to me about, a business matter, but not to worry about it. He said it in the voice he used when he definitely wanted me to worry about it, that overly casual tone, too flat, too deliberate. I said, of course, come for lunch. I would make chili. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed and I thought about what Ray Hensley had said, someone asking about my property. I had 4 acres with a house, a detached garage, and a workshop I had built myself 10 years ago behind the main structure. Carol and I had bought this land in 1998 for $62,000. I had looked it up out of curiosity 2 years ago. The county assessment put it at $430,000. With the way prices had moved since then, it was likely higher now. I thought about Ryan. He was my son. I loved him, but I also had known for some time, in that quiet way you know things you do not want to examine directly, that his business had not been going well. He had mentioned it obliquely, maybe a year before. A deal that fell through. A partner situation that got complicated. Melissa had stopped working for one of her clients without explanation. They had refinanced their house. I am a history teacher. I know that the clearest sign of a crisis coming is usually a series of small things that seem unrelated until you line them up. I got up at 2 in the morning, went to my office, and I opened my filing cabinet. Carol and I had always kept meticulous records. Mortgage documents, account statements, the deed to the property, which was in both our names originally and had transferred to mine alone after she passed. I also had a binder from the attorney who had handled her estate. I read through everything I could find about my financial situation, my accounts, and what would need to happen for me to transfer or sell this property. In Pennsylvania, to sell real estate, the owner signs a listing agreement and then a sales agreement. Those require notarization. They require my signature. No one could sell my property without my direct participation. But I found this sitting in a county record summary I had downloaded months ago and never read carefully. If a person were declared legally incapacitated, a court-appointed guardian, or a person holding durable power of attorney could act on their behalf in property transactions. I had a durable power of attorney document. Carol and I had made them for each other when she got sick. After she died, I had not updated mine. The document I had on file designated Ryan as my agent if I were to become incapacitated. I sat back in my chair and the house was very quiet. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Ryan was my son and that I was building a conspiracy out of a stranger's offhand comment and my own 2 a.m. anxiety. I went back to bed. Sunday lunch was chili and cornbread. The kids ran around the backyard. Melissa was warm and laughed easily and played with Harper on the back porch. Ryan helped me carry things to the table, and we talked about the weather and about Owen's soccer season. After we ate and the kids were watching something in the living room, Ryan sat across from me at the kitchen table and Melissa came in and sat beside him. Ryan said he wanted to talk to me about my living situation. He said he and Melissa had been thinking for a while that the property was more than I could manage alone at my age. He said it with kindness. The way you say something you have been rehearsing. He said the upkeep, the 4 acres, the maintenance, the isolation. He was worried about me. They both were. Melissa nodded at the right moments. Ryan said there was a very nice continuing care community outside Chambersburg. Newer construction. A lot of amenities. He said he had already visited it once just to look, he said. Just to have information. I asked him when he visited it. He said about 3 weeks ago. I looked at my son, and I thought about a silver Jeep parked at the end of my driveway. I kept my voice very even. I said I appreciated his concern and that it was something worth thinking about. I said I was not ready to make any decisions, but that I would keep an open mind. Ryan relaxed. Melissa smiled. They left around 4. I stood in the kitchen after they drove away, and I thought about something Carol used to say to me when my students tried to argue their way to a grade they had not earned. She would say, "Frank, when someone works that hard to sound reasonable, they are usually not being reasonable." I called a man I trusted the next morning, not a close friend, but someone I had known for 20 years, a retired attorney named Gerald Marsh, who had done some estate work for us in the past and who I occasionally ran into at the Rotary breakfast. I told him I needed some information and that I wanted to keep the conversation quiet. Gerald met me for coffee on Monday afternoon. I told him everything. Ray Hensley's comment, the silver Jeep, the durable power of attorney, Ryan's visit. Gerald listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said the power of attorney was worth updating immediately, regardless of anything else. He said he could draw up a new document that week. Designating a different agent, he suggested a neutral third party, a professional fiduciary, and that would effectively remove Ryan's legal standing to act on my behalf. He also said something else. He said, if someone were planning to move me toward a guardianship proceeding, which would require demonstrating I was incapacitated, there might be documentation of that intent somewhere. Emails, correspondence with attorneys, possibly communications with the care community Ryan had visited. He said he did not want to alarm me. But he said I should go home and look carefully at anything that might not belong. I drove home and I walked the property. I do not know exactly what I was looking for. I walked the garage, the backyard, the workshop. The workshop is a structure I am proud of. I built it myself over 2 summers in my mid-50s. It is about 20 feet by 24 feet, with a concrete floor, good insulation, and a workbench along the back wall. I keep tools in there, some woodworking equipment, and along the right side there are shelves where I store things, paint cans, a spare water pump, boxes of old household records going back 15 years. I had not been in the workshop much since summer. The door stuck a little from the fall dampness when I pushed it open. I walked in and stood looking around. Nothing seemed different. The workbench was as I left it. The tools were on their hooks. Then I looked at the shelves. There were my paint cans, the spare pump, the boxes, and between the second and third boxes on the middle shelf, there was something I did not put there. A manila envelope. It was not sealed. Inside was a printed document, about 12 pages, and a handwritten note on a yellow sticky pad attached to the front. The handwritten note said, "Reviewed. Should work confirm with D before we move forward on the assessment piece." The printed document was a draft letter addressed to the Court of Common Pleas of Franklin County. It was a petition for appointment of a guardian. It alleged that Frank Deller, age 67, of the listed address, was exhibiting signs of cognitive impairment, memory difficulties, and an inability to manage his financial affairs, and that his son, Ryan Deller, requested appointment as plenary guardian of his person and estate. There was a section in the draft that referred to a supporting physician's assessment. The name of the physician was not filled in, there was just a blank line. But the notation D on the sticky note, and the phrase "the assessment piece," landed in my chest like something physical. I stood in my workshop and I read that document twice. Then I put it back in the envelope exactly as I found it and went inside and called Gerald. Gerald told me not to touch it again and not to let Ryan know I had found it. He said we needed to move carefully. He said the most important thing was that the document was on my property, in a location Ryan or someone connected to him must have placed it, and that if Ryan did not know I had found it, we had an advantage. He told me to let him make a few calls. Over the next 4 days, I went about my life as normally as I could manage. I went to the grocery store. I raked leaves. I called Ryan on Wednesday evening and talked to him for 20 minutes about nothing, and my voice did not shake once, which I considered an accomplishment. Gerald called me on Thursday afternoon. He had contacted a private attorney who handled elder law and guardianship cases. He had also reached out, quietly, to someone he knew at the county courthouse who confirmed that no petition had yet been filed. The document in my workshop was still in draft. That meant we had time. Gerald also told me what he had found out about the D in the sticky note. There was a physician in Chambersburg named Dr. Dennis Farrell who operated a private geriatric assessment practice. His office had been in contact with a person named Melissa Deller. The contact had been recent, within the last 2 months. My daughter-in-law had been arranging a cognitive assessment for me that I knew nothing about. I want to say something here because I have thought about it a great deal since. The grief of this was not about the property. I had managed 4 acres and a house alone for 3 years. I was in good health. I taught myself to cook after Carol died. I read constantly. I stayed sharp. I walked 2 miles every morning. The idea that I was impaired was not only false, it was engineered. The grief of it was Ryan, my son, the boy I had coached in Little League and driven to school and watched graduate. The man I had lent money to, twice without asking for it back. The grief was sitting across from him at lunch on Sunday and watching him rehearse his concern for me while in his car. Probably. There were notes about how to establish my incompetence. I did not let myself stay in that grief. Carol always said I was better with action than with feeling, and she was right. Gerald and the elder law attorney, a woman named Patricia Shu, had a plan. The first step was the power of attorney. Gerald drafted a new one that week. I signed it on Friday morning, properly witnessed and notarized, naming Patricia Shu's firm as my agent in the event of any incapacity proceedings. Ryan's name was removed entirely. The second step was a documented cognitive evaluation. Patricia's firm had a relationship with a licensed neuropsychologist who agreed to see me within the week. I sat through 3 hours of testing memory, executive function, language, processing speed. The results were, in the psychologist's words, completely normal for my age and significantly above average in several categories. We had that report in writing. The third step was a certified real estate appraisal of my property, ordered through Patricia's office, establishing current market value and documenting that I had initiated it myself, voluntarily, demonstrating full understanding of my assets. And the fourth step, the one I had not expected Patricia to suggest, but which Gerald supported, was filing a report with the Pennsylvania State Police Elder Abuse Unit, because what Ryan and Melissa had been doing had a name. It is called elder financial abuse when it involves the manipulation of an older adult's legal or financial situation for personal gain. The guardianship petition, even as a draft, combined with the undisclosed contact with Dr. Farrell's office and the evidence that someone had accessed my private workshop to plant documents, constituted enough for an investigation. The investigator, a quiet and methodical woman named Sergeant Brianne Tolley, called me the following week. She asked me to walk her through everything from the beginning, and I did. I gave her the sequence: Ray Hensley's warning at Rutter's, the Sunday lunch, finding the document in the workshop, the sticky note, everything. She told me that the detail about the workshop was significant because I had not given anyone access to it, which meant that someone had entered my property without permission. That was a separate issue from the elder abuse question, and it mattered. She also asked me something I had been asking myself since Thursday. She asked whether Ryan might have had a key to the workshop. I thought about it, and then I remembered. 2 years ago, when I had back surgery and was recovering for 6 weeks, Ryan had come to the house every few days to check on things. I had given him a key to the workshop so he could check the water pump I kept there during a cold snap. I had never asked for it back. When I told Sergeant Tolley that, she was quiet for a moment, and then said, "Thank you. That's helpful." What happened after that unfolded over several weeks, and I will tell it to you as plainly as I can. Sergeant Tolley and her unit interviewed Ryan. They interviewed Melissa. They contacted Dr. Dennis Farrell's office and confirmed that Melissa had spoken with his staff twice about scheduling a capacity assessment for me without my knowledge. Dr. Farrell, to his credit, had not yet agreed to conduct it. He had asked for a referral from my primary care physician, which Melissa had been trying to obtain through means I will not detail here, because they are still part of the legal record. They also confirmed through Ryan's own email records, which were obtained through the investigation, that he had been in contact with a real estate broker about my property. The emails referenced the property as potentially coming to market in early spring. Ryan had been in financial trouble more serious than I knew. The business had over $200,000 in debt. Their house was in a second forbearance. The emails between Ryan and Melissa about my situation were, according to Sergeant Tolley, very clear about their intent. Ryan was charged with criminal conspiracy and attempted exploitation of an older adult. Melissa was charged as a co-conspirator. Dr. Farrell's office was referred to the state medical board for review of their intake process. I am not going to tell you the criminal process was satisfying. It was not. It was slow and expensive, and it required me to sit in a room with my son across a table and listen to his attorney describe him as a concerned family member who had become overzealous. Ryan did not look at me during most of it. When he did, I did not know what I saw in his face. I still do not. What I can tell you is this. The charges stood. Ryan pled guilty to a reduced charge of attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Melissa pled separately. Ryan received 3 years of probation, a substantial fine, mandatory financial counseling, and was ordered to have no contact with me for the duration of probation. Melissa received probation and similar conditions. My property is still mine. My affairs are my own. I update my documents every year now, with Patricia Shu's office. And I have a small circle of people, Gerald, Patricia, a neighbor named Charles, who I have become friends with over the past year, who I trust. Owen and Harper are the part of this I think about most carefully. They are 9 and 11 now. They are not responsible for what their parents did. I have spoken to a family therapist about how to navigate a relationship with my grandchildren when their parents and I cannot have contact, and it is complicated and ongoing, and I do not have all the answers yet. But I think about Carol a lot. I think about what she would have said about Ryan, and I think she would have been devastated in a way that would have taken years to work through. She would also, eventually, have been practical about it. She was always more practical than I was about the people she loved. She understood that loving someone and trusting them are two different things, and that you can hold on to one after the other is gone. I am still in my house. The leaves are down now, and the yard needs work, but I got to most of it before the first frost. I fixed a section of fencing along the back of the workshop that had been leaning since August. The workshop itself I reorganized completely. I put new shelving in. I know exactly what is on every shelf. Some mornings I get up early and stand in the kitchen with my coffee before the light comes all the way up, and I think about what would have happened if Ray Hensley had not been in line ahead of me at Rutter's on that Saturday in October. He was there because he had a job on Orchard Road. I was there because I had run out of coffee at home 2 days before and kept forgetting to buy more. Carol would have said that was not coincidence. She believed in that kind of thing. The idea that the universe has a way of putting the right person in front of you at the right moment if you are paying enough attention to notice them. I am not sure I believe it the way she did, but I believe in Ray Hensley. I believe in what it means to see a person standing in line who looks like he might be alone in the world and decide that his situation is your business, even when it is easier to say nothing. I tracked Ray down through his company's website about 2 months after everything was settled. I called the number, and his wife answered, and she got him on the phone. I told him briefly what had happened, not all of it, just enough. I told him that the morning he spoke to me at Rutter's had changed things in a way I could not fully explain. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Carol would have done the same thing for anybody." I just figured I owed it to her. I did not trust my voice for a few seconds after he said that. I told him I would like to have him and his wife over for dinner sometime, if they were willing. He said they would like that. We have had dinner twice now. His wife's name is Donna, and she laughs at everything and makes him pretend to be annoyed by it, and they have been married 44 years. Last time they came over, I made a pot roast that Carol used to make, from a recipe card in her handwriting that I found in the back of the kitchen drawer. Donna said it was the best pot roast she had ever had. I said that was entirely Carol's doing. Ray said, "The way he says most things, quietly and without looking up from his plate, sounds about right."